Looking for a fun way to win up to 25 times your money this basketball season? Test your skills on Prize Picks, the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projection for a wide variety of stats, and place your entry. It's as easy as that. If you have the skills, you can turn $10 into $250 with just a few taps. Easy gameplay, quick withdrawals, and injury insurance on your picks are what make Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. Ready to test your skills? Join the Prize Picks community of more than 7 million players who have already signed up. Right now, Prize Picks will match your first deposit up to $100. Just visit prizepicks.com/get100 and use code GET100. That's code GET100 at prizepicks.com/get100 for a first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy.
You are listening to the Hiking Radio Network, where we talk the walk with shows by hikers about hikers for everybody.
I'm wondering if you'd go wandering with me through the wilderness and woods to where the winds are blowing free, through the darkness of the night.
Welcome to the Jester Section Hiker Podcast, where we talk about the continual pursuit of the section hiker.
And I'll spread the word and you beat the drum. We'll round up the troops and get the gang to come, and we'll leave the streets and these neighborhoods, head over the river and through the woods.
Welcome to the Jester Section Hiker Podcast. I'm your host, Julie Jester Gayhart, and this is the podcast where we talk about the continual pursuit of the section hiker and what it takes to complete a trail section by section. For me, it took 12 years to section hike the Appalachian Trail from June of 2006 until July of 2017. I'm an educator by day, but a hiker at heart. I'll hike north, south, backpack, slack pack, day hike, or even these days, glamp to get the job done. Welcome, everyone, to the first episode of the Jester Section Hiker Podcast. I am really excited to be hosting this podcast specifically about section hikers. I'd like to thank everyone who has reached out to me to be on the podcast and willing to share their stories. There are some amazing section hikers out there, and I can't wait for all of you to hear about who they are. I'd like to thank Steve, or as you all know him as Mighty Blue, and the Hiking Radio Network for having the vision for this podcast, and to the Okee Dokee Brothers for letting us use their song, Through the Woods, as our podcast theme song. There will be more on the Okee Dokee Brothers in a future episode. Kevin Cyrus joins us for our debut episode on the Jester Section Hiker Podcast. Kevin Purple Pilgrim started the Appalachian Trail on April 18th, 1992 at 21 years old with the intentions of through hiking the trail, but he ended up completing the trail in 2 back-to-back summer sections. I'm excited to have Kevin on as our first guest because Kevin is part of my journey on the Appalachian Trail and the first AT hiker I had a direct connection with, but we have never talked until now. Because my dad was friends with Kevin and talked about hiking with Kevin, a spark lit in me that one day I would start hiking the AT. Kevin became my AT inspiration. Welcome to the podcast, Kevin.
Thanks for having me, Julie. I'm excited to be here as well. Thank you.
Well, hopefully, since this is the first time you and I are really chatting besides a couple weeks ago on the phone, I'm really excited for the listeners to find out who you are, find out about your journey, and how the AT has actually, changed who you are. And we're going to go ahead and get started. So let's just start off, Kevin. How did you hear about the Appalachian Trail and what made you decide to set out for a hike?
All right. Well, I think I was around 17 years old. It was my junior year in high school. And my dad showed me an article in a Reader's Digest. And, I don't know what it was about it but it seemed like, I read it, and right then and there, I knew that one day I would hike the trail. It just, I don't know, just everything about it, just kind of the romance of it, the nature aspect to it, and the adventure of it. It just really caught my attention. And I just really, it seemed like I didn't, I don't remember having a point where, I thought, I should do this. It seemed like from reading that article, it seemed like I just knew that one day I would hike the trail.
That sounds familiar. It's just something that gets in your gut. When you decide you're going to hike the AT, it's just something that burns inside of you and you have to do it.
Certainly. Yes, ma'am.
So that trail name, Purple Pilgrim, how did you get your trail name, Kevin?
Well, I guess a couple things is I, started buying gear, of course, and I didn't plan to buy a lot of purple gear, but it just kind of happened. I bought a Camp Trails backpack, and it seemed like I started buying, my outerwear. This was early 90s. So, I think color schemes, were big back then, were like fuchsias and teal greens and purples. And I remember I bought a Columbia pullover that had like all those colors in it. And so I bought other gear that just happened to have purple in it.
Oh my goodness, you hit the trail and people were like, whoa, what's coming up the trail?
Sure. So I was just all purpled out for whatever reason. It just happened that way. But then in the same token, the other part of it is why I say the Pilgrim in particular is, like a lot of people, I grew up in church and in a Christian home, but I got up in my, I would say teen years, but actually even a little bit younger. I started smoking pot and started doing drugs and drinking and all that probably when I was about 12. And so, I started living a pretty wild lifestyle, and that was kind of who I was. And I was planning the trail or planning to hike the AT as a I guess a big partier, if you will,
right?
And somebody who who lives that lifestyle. And about a month before I went out, I just had just God was working on my heart as I was planning it, and I was anticipating it, and I was nervous, of course, nervous excitement, with anticipation, but there were just some things that happened to where God just really spoke to me, and I accepted him, and I realized that the truths of the Bible that I was brought up in, were exactly that. They were truths. And so I just totally changed who I was and my outlook on life. And I just realized that, life is a pilgrimage, and we're all going, somewhere. And the trail, of course, is, the ultimate pilgrimage and adventure. And I just kind of decided before I went, I had read about people going on the trail and doing different things where they earn trail names, so to speak.
Right.
But I just knew I was, again, with all that purple gear and my new outlook on life, I just kind of thought I'm the Purple Pilgrim. And I have been ever since. I've got a friend that calls me Purple or Pilgrim, and Lori always refers to me as her Purple Pilgrim, and just who I am.
I think it's great,
well,
especially all that purple gear. So the trail was calling you, God was calling you, and it was time for you to step your foot on the Appalachian Trail and head to Springer Mountain.
That's right.
And we talked about your first trip up to Springer Mountain, and Kevin, you took a 0 day the very next day.
I did.
That's kind of unusual.
Yeah, I did.
So, so you started the trail on Springer Mountain. You took a 0 day the very next day. Did you have that planned, or did that just happen?
I really don't remember if I planned it. I do know that, of course, to get up to the shelter, on Springer was a bit of a hike. I don't remember what it was, but so, I thought that was a day of hiking. And then this was a Saturday. The next day was Easter Sunday. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to just enjoy the holiday. I'm going to take the day off, lay around, enjoy the shelter, write, and all that good stuff. And so again, I guess it just kind of happened. I really didn't plan it, but I got up there and just decided to chill right away. And I think, we'll later get into it.
Kevin, most people are so excited they don't chill on the first day.
That is crazy, but that's kind of, I'm just, I guess that low key, and I'm all about chilling. And that's probably why, again, when it's all said and done, the Appalachian Trail did end up taking me 9.5 months. And I'm going to say that was right from the beginning. That was my start, and that's the way I continued throughout the trail. A lot of off days, a lot of 0 days, as you said.
A lot of 0 days, and we'll get into some of that. I have, of all the hikers I've met, I've never met anyone that took a 0 day basically on the first day.
Right.
Like everyone's so excited to get up to Springer Mountain or Katahdin at the other end.
Sure.
It's like most people are ready to do 20 miles, and people are going slow down.
Right.
And not you, Kevin.
Nope.
So
I was just glad to be there.
Which is going to lead us down the path where basically You started off with the intentions of a through hike, correct?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, I had, from everything I read about through hikers and all that, it seemed like 5 and 6 months was the kind of the standard, and I really assumed that I would do it within 6 months. Starting on April 18th, I thought I could be up there by October, I guess, something to that effect. And I really had every intention of doing the whole thing that first summer.
Well, I'm glad you didn't because you're my first guest on the Section Hiker podcast. So there you go.
Right on. See, that worked.
You didn't know that was going to happen 27 years later, now did you?
Exactly. Had no idea, but I'm glad it did, though, certainly.
So basically, you hit the trail on Springer Mountain. You took that 0 day, and you mentioned you hung out in towns a lot. You started staying in towns, and then those days started adding up. So what made you stay in town so much?
Well, I it seemed like they were comfortable. They were comfortable. They're just kind of, of course, how the trail towns are. They just have, they have a vibe to them. They're just neat places. And two, I love it down south, and just totally different world than where I live, of course, up here in Ohio.
Right.
And so everything about it was just cool, and I just wanted to be there, and was enjoying the food. Eating lots of ice cream, of course, and just the hostels, staying in these hostels were just neat environments. And I just couldn't get enough of them. So I just stuck around.
Do you remember like your first trail town, your first hostel you stayed at, the people that were there, the vibe? Do you remember that?
Well, I guess the first hostel, I really don't remember, but I do remember the first town, I think, that really had the gravity that I ended up staying for, days, if not about a week, was Hot Springs, North Carolina.
Oh yeah.
And I think it was a hostel run by, I believe back then it was run by a church, maybe a Catholic church. I really don't remember, but it just had a homey feel to it. And the people around there were nice. And again, obviously Hot Springs is a cool little town. So again, that was one I'm thinking I might've stayed, somewhere around probably 5 days and just kind of hung out, and it was good.
Were the hot springs actually open back then? Were you able to go down to the hot springs area and actually get in the hot springs and enjoy all that aspect of it?
Honestly, I don't remember. I'm thinking they probably were, and why I wouldn't have done that, I really don't know. Having a town named after him, but
I'm thinking
honestly,
that may have been what kept you in town.
Yeah, no, I was just hanging out and eating a lot of good food, and just enjoying just being there. But yeah, honestly, I really don't believe I went down to the springs.
So would you say you started out as a man on a mission, a more casual, hiker? You leave out of Hot Springs. Like, what's your vibe? What's Kevin's vibe on the trail? What would people say, that were coming across you?
Well, I think it was, again, it was very laid back. I had every intention, of hiking and completing it that summer. But in the same token, it seemed like somewhere along the trail, I accepted or kind of came up with the motto of, it's all part of the adventure. So, kind of wherever I go, whatever I do, whoever I meet, it's all part of the adventure. So I just, and again, that's really how it, ended up taking so long. I was having so much fun. I didn't want to rush it. I was in no hurry to complete it. It was all about just being there. And so really, I remember specifically, I just kind of, thought, I'm just going to throw out my schedule. I'm just going to take my time. And, when I get there, I get there. And
whatever happens, happens.
Exactly. It's all part of the adventure.
Now, were you hiking around? Did you have, nowadays, the through hikers that are out there and section hikers that are out there, even section hikers that are out there for a while, did you have a trail family? Were you hiking around some buddies, or were you more solo?
Well, I teamed up with a guy just the other side of Springer when I finally did start hiking a couple days later.
I'm gonna laugh about that for a while.
Yeah. And I never really even thought about it, to tell you the truth, but it's a good point. But I did. I met up with a guy, and we ended up being together, I believe, for a couple weeks. And he was a bit older than me, and I remember he had bad knees, and he was slow going, and we eventually, had got separated, and we never did hook back up again. I think he had to take a couple off days because of his knees, and actually I did keep hiking then. And then, but that said, and then later, I'm not sure where I was, but I met another guy from Kingston, Ohio, and he was as well as a few years older than me. But we became hiking partners, and we were together for I'm going to say a couple months. Called himself Peppermint Slim,
Oh, no.
and
Okay, that's one I haven't heard.
yeah, good old Peppermint Slim from Kingston, Ohio, and yeah, we were together for quite some time. And then we would see some of the same people, but again with my pace, because even then, besides the off days, I wasn't into big mileage. I was doing 8 mile days, 10, 12 mile days, and stuff like that. And so there was a lot of folks that were hiking on. And so I was I guess as every day goes by, every week goes by, I'm falling further and further behind the pack, the main push.
Kevin, you were
Katahdin.
soaking it all in. 8 mile days.
Oh yeah. I was in no hurry whatsoever.
I just think that's the coolest thing. So now we've established Kevin's pattern. He likes to hang out in towns. He's got an 8 to 10 mile a day pace. I think 10 miles might be stretching it at this point. So
It might be. Yeah.
when did you decide, or when did that decision have to be made that your hike was going to turn into a longer hike? Maybe not even back then did they call people section hikers. When did you make the decision? Because there was a point in your hike that you flipped up to Katahdin, and somewhere along the way, you had to have known you were not going to finish that season. So when did that decision start brewing up in your mind? And then I want to talk about how you got to Katahdin.
Okay, sure. I think really as far as the idea to flip flop came probably from other hikers. Again, I was just doing my thing and really not thinking much about it. And I was, talking to other people as I'm going along, staying in shelters with other people and kind of, telling them about my thing. And they'd mention, whatever the next day was. And I'm like, yeah, I think I'm going to just take the day off and hang out or whatever.
Are you ready to go back out there again? Because I think I'm going with you.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Hey, and we'd get it done eventually.
Yes,
as
we
long
would.
As you were
Yes, we would.
We would. But so I did. I think other folks started saying, you're not going to make it to Katahdin by, whatever time. And I just didn't think much about it or really care. And I thought, I'm just going to keep going. And so then at some point, though, I did realize, though, and at this point, I'm still intending to do it all in one season. But I did realize I was going to need to do a flip flop. And I thought, because I knew if I didn't, it was going to be up in October. I knew Katahdin could get closed. I think potentially in September or something because of weather.
September. I think now it's even this time of year, mid-October. They're looking at the snow, and Katahdin might stay up until the end of October. I'm not sure. I don't remember. At one point, it was October 15th. But yeah, so you're getting close to the snow zone, and in your mind, you're like, all right, I got to get to Katahdin.
Certainly. Yeah. Just, I didn't want to chance it. So I thought, and again, because it was all good. I thought I don't have a preference whether I'm hiking north or south. And the same token too, I thought, well, this is going to be a new added part of the adventures to head on up the Main and start hiking back south. I thought that sounded pretty cool as well. So I did. I decided to flip flop, and this would have been in July. So I came off the trail in Parisburg, Virginia, and I started hitchhiking.
And Kevin, I hear Perrysburg, Virginia, and I go, Kevin, that's not that far. So in your mind,
oh yeah, when you exactly, I do. Right? No, you're right. I still had a long.
You still had a long way to go. So most people, when they decide to make the decision, again, we're learning about Kevin and his pace and his mojo up the trail. When they made the decision, oh my goodness, I got to flip. All of a sudden, the schedule comes out. I got to do this. I got to do that. And most people hop on a plane and somehow end up somewhere in Maine, get a car ride, and they're on Katahdin. So, Kevin, how'd you get to Katahdin?
I hitchhiked from Parisburg. And, but first I took a detour again, because my schedule allowed for it. So I hitched
Kevin's calendar. That's what I'm going to call it.
Yeah. Or my lack of schedule allowed for it. So yeah, I did. I hitchhiked over to, I've got an older brother who lives close to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
So how many hitches from Perrysburg to Philadelphia?
That I can't imagine, but actually somewhere just outside of when I'd started in Parisburg, I caught a ride that took me maybe, it took me a long ways. It took me, and I wish I could say for sure, but I can't. But I did catch one ride that took me probably 2/3 of it.
Wow.
and got me up there pretty close. It was a young guy who was going to Virginia Tech and going to college there, and he was going home for the weekend, and he wanted somebody just to ride with him and talk to and all that. So he did. He picked me up, and he took me all the way up to, I believe his family lived maybe in Maryland, and so I hitched it. And so that was cool too, because I went and met his family, and it was kind of funny too, because he brings me in there to meet his family, and so they of course think he's bringing a friend home, from college, to stay the weekend. And he's like, Mom and Dad, I picked him up hitchhiking, and again, I'm tagged.
He says he's out hiking the Appalachian Trail, but
exactly. That was his story, and he was sticking to it, but. So he did. So he took me home, and I spent the night with them, and they were really good to me and fed me and all that good stuff, of course. But then I hitchhiked from there over to my brother's house, and I ended up staying there probably about a week. And from there, a buddy of mine wanted to join me on the trail, a childhood friend of mine, Mikey. And so he caught a bus, and he met me there in Pennsylvania, and we started hitchhiking for Katahdin, and that took us probably another. I'm going to say we probably took another, maybe 5 days to hitchhike to Katahdin from there, and caught a lot of rides, met a lot of good people.
I'm going to have you back on just to specifically, sounds like it was 5, 6, 7, 8 days from Perrysburg up to Katahdin. So most people in their mind, Kevin, are going, oh my God, I could be hiking those 8 days. I could be doing X, Y, Z. But now we've learned not Kevin. He's up for the adventure no matter what, right?
Certainly. Yes, ma'am. Oh yeah. It was a blast. The hitchhike. And that is something going into the hike. I knew that I would be hitchhiking into towns for mail drops and all that, but I guess I never knew how much I would like it. And so again, my big hitches, stay up there. And then for that matter, even when I came off the trail later, when I went home for the winter, which we had talked about, there, which I'm sure we'll get to, but Bear Mountain, I hitchhiked from Bear Mountain back home to Ohio then as well. And again, that was a blast, and just met some amazing people, it was a good time.
Part of the journey.
That's right.
So at this point, you're at Katahdin. Do you remember thinking, all right, I need to get my acting gear and start hiking south, get organized, get it together? Or is the Purple Pilgrim we still know going from Katahdin, hanging out in towns, doing his thing? What's happening once we get to Katahdin?
Yeah, it was pretty much the same mentality. I just started walking, and just taking it all in, and I'm sure it wasn't long before I started, having them 0 days again, and hanging out at some cool shelters. I can't say, specifically what shelters really impressed me, but I do remember some absolutely beautiful shelters, say in the 100-mile wilderness, of course, and just wherever else. And I'd hang out, and just enjoy being there. And so I was pretty much, same old style hiking south as I was north.
Which is not surprising at this point. So we get through Maine, we get through New Hampshire, get down into Vermont and all that good stuff. So take us through when you had to make the decision, this is not going to happen this year.
I think it was pretty late, to tell you the truth. I really believe that even as late as probably October, within maybe 2 weeks of me coming off the trail, I still thought I was, hiking back to Perrysburg that season. But again, we're up in October now, and I am down in, like you had said, like say Vermont and all that, and I am seeing less and less people, and there are no more northbounders, of course, and pretty much the only people on the trail are, at the state parks and so on, just day hikers and, our weekenders and stuff like that. So there's no long distance backpackers. So it was getting to be just kind of I don't want to say a lonely place, but it was just different. It had a totally different vibe, of course.
Right.
And I just realized that, again, getting up in October, and it was getting cold, and I knew how far I had to go, which was a long way.
But Kevin, were you actually thinking about it at this point?
I had to. Yeah, okay. At this point I did, because it was getting cold. And again, there was nobody else out there for the most part.
So how many months in was that? So that was 6 months?
That was like 6 months in. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So in your mind, what made you decide Bear Mountain, New York?
I don't remember. I don't know if it was a date thing, because I came off on Halloween on October 31st. And I don't remember if I had set the goal for, say for that date or for that place. I'm really not sure why it was then and there. And maybe it was just October. I thought, to be out here in November was maybe pushing it. And I thought, I'll just come off at the last of October and come back next spring. I'm assuming it probably just happened that way.
All right. So you're off the trail, you go home. And one of the things we talked about is I asked you, well, what did you do when you got home? Were you like really, really, really thinking about the trail? Were you, now I throw this word out there, planning to go back to the trail? Or what was going on in Kevin's mind once you got home?
Yeah. As far as thinking about the trail, yes. Yeah. I thought about it, just continuously. And it was like just being home for the weekend, so to speak,
Right.
even though it was a long weekend. It's like my heart, the whole time from the moment I came off the trail, I knew that I was coming back, had no doubts whatsoever. And so it's kind of like almost something I just had to do. So I enjoyed, I was there for, of course, Christmas and Thanksgiving and all that. So I was really enjoyed my family time and all that. But, I kept walking. I was walking city streets, a lot of city streets and stuff versus, trails and all that. Ended up getting tendonitis in my hip. And I think it's just from all that too even ground, just all that continuous pounding the pavement and all that, ended up getting tendonitis and had to take off maybe a couple weeks then of my training. I'm going to call it.
Didn't you tell me at one point you ended up on crutches or having to?
I did, with the tendonitis, I did. I ended up because I needed to rest it, of course. So I ended up hobbling around there on crutches, and that was there in the spring, probably within a month of going back. It was getting real close to actually going back to the trail when the tendonitis hit me, and I had to kind of take a break before I hit the trail again.
So you're gearing up, you're amping up to go back out again. So the first section I'm going to call Good Times Kevin. And then the second section.
I like that.
So the first section, Good Times Kevin, lead us into the second section. You went back the very next season or the very next summer and
yes, ma'am.
Started in, I'm assuming, Bear Mountain, New York, and went south, correct?
Correct. Yep, I did. I went straight back to where I came off, there at Bear Mountain. And this time, instead of hitchhiking, I did have had a buddy and a friend of his, another childhood friend of mine, drove me. They drove me back to Bear Mountain, and I got back on the trail and started hiking south. I think right away after getting back on the trail was, I believe it was Greylock. It's there's a monastery. I don't know if that's something that's still there, but there's
actually Greylock is in Massachusetts, but there is a monastery in New York, and I cannot remember the name of it, but I know exactly where you're talking about because I actually camped at that monastery. I just don't know the name of it. Right before you go over the bridge.
Yeah, it was right there, right by Bear Mountain. I remember it was very close.
Yeah.
And you say, okay, yeah. So, and back then too, tell me, I don't know if it was the case when you were there, but back then they would actually let hikers stay in a room for the night. They would take you in for the night, feed you a meal. And it was amazing. And there were a bunch of Franciscan friars, I believe is what they were.
Yeah. The Graymore Friary. That is exactly what it is.
Graymore okay,
Friary.
There you go. All right. Thank you. Yeah.
When I went through there, we stayed in like a ball field with a big picnic pavilion. They had picnic tables and all kinds of stuff out there. So Graymore Friary, really nice place. But I don't remember it being open for hikers. That's not to say it wasn't, but we just kind of camped out in the ball field.
Sure, right on.
All right, so take us from there. So Good Time Kevin's round 2.
Okay, yes, ma'am. So yeah, my buddy Larry, one of my best friends, who had again dropped me off back there at Bear Mountain, he had went home, and he couldn't stop thinking about the trail and the fact that I was out there, and that he wasn't, and he's a big outdoorsman, and we're really close. We've been friends since we were kids.
What's Larry's last name?
Matheny.
Okay. I didn't know if he was if I knew him or not, so probably not, huh?
Well, I back in the day, say, with the manual, of course, where we both went to church, I did take him probably a time or two. So I'm assuming you would have seen him at some point at least.
Probably, unless I was out being rebellious and doing things I shouldn't have been doing.
Exactly. Well, there's that too, right? And it could have been the case. Yeah.
All right. So get us down the trail. Yeah. Bear Mountain down through, Pennsylvania, all that good stuff. Is Larry with you at this point?
Yeah, at this point, actually, so Larry, again, he can't stop thinking about the trail and he wants to be out there with me. So he, again, I think gets a bus ticket, whatever the case is, gets himself there, and he meets me at Delaware Water Gap.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
And back then, again, there was a church, and the church, like downstairs in the basement, or they had a facilities next to the church built onto it or something. But they had an area where, again, kind of a hostel, so to speak, where hikers can, crash for the night. So he met me there, and we were there maybe a night or two, and then we started hiking. And he was with me for like a month, and I think it took us about a month to cross Pennsylvania.
Okay.
Yeah.
So did he take on the Good Times Kevin vibe, or what's the vibe now on the trail is when you're hiking with him and you guys are going through Pennsylvania?
Yeah, he did. He was I think he was cool with my schedule, but in the same token, Larry's kind of a motivated, I don't know, I'd almost say just a hardcore kind of guy. And I think he would have been cool with bigger mileage and maybe pushing it a bit more. But I guess he knew he was just there to be with me, and we were just hanging out, and so we pretty much kept the same easy schedule. I had a lot of fun together. That was a real blessing to have him with me.
Do you remember an event or maybe a town or something in particular that stands out for you and Larry, or maybe some other people that you met on the trail?
He hadn't been around, say, through hikers and all that, of course. And I remember just some of the people we would meet that were different, of course. And
Right.
it seemed like he just got a kick out of, maybe just the oddness of some of it. So that was something I think he appreciated, say, as far as a particular event or place. So no, not so much. I know he was just glad to be there and having a lot of fun.
Gotcha. So get us down to Perrysburg, Virginia. How was your finale?
Yes, ma'am. Well, I had somebody else join me. I had met a woman the summer before that was a section hiker, and her trail name was Shooting Star.
Okay.
So and I really don't even remember where I had met her, but it was somewhere down south. It was before I had done my flip flop. So, we talked and maybe had spent a night or two in a shelter together and visited a bit and all that. So we exchanged information, and she was saying that the following year when she was going to do she was maybe doing 2 weeks of summer or something to that effect, that, and I think for that matter, she hadn't been through the area that I had to do to complete it. And she thought that she would just go ahead and, do a flip flop of sorts and do that section with me.
Okay.
And just consider that done. So at some point there, a couple weeks out from Perrysburg, she and her son joined me.
Okay.
And so they hiked in those last like 2 weeks with me, and they were there with me, when I completed it. Plus, for that matter, my parents drove out from Xenia.
Oh, very nice. Very nice.
Yeah. They were there to pick me up and bring me home.
So you didn't hitchhike home when you were done?
No, not this time. No, ma'am. No, the folks were there with me, and so that was cool.
Very good. Very good. Well, that leads us to your trail journals and a book you're working on from those journals. Tell us about the potential title for your book.
Well, I had a couple titles I'd been toying with, and I'd mentioned kind of my mentality and my motto, so to speak, of it's all part of the adventure.
That's become very clear, Kevin. We got it.
Yeah, exactly. So I did. I thought that would be potentially a good title, but what's really and again kind of goes along with my whole mentality for the hike was Georgia to Maine, any way it takes, as long as it takes. And
I love it.
That kind of Thank you. That kind of wraps up, exactly who I was and how I hiked. And so I think that would probably be a fun name.
So any way it takes, as long as it takes. I love it.
Yes.
I love it.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
So Kevin, it's been 27 years since you completed the trail. You and I talked about how really there's not been a day that you haven't thought something about the trail. What do you miss about it the most, or what memory do you hold on to the most?
I'd say as far as what I miss most, just the adventure, the simplicity. It's just an amazing way to live. Again, as we talked, the whole, food, water, shelter, of course.
Right.
But, it's just the everyday, just being out in nature. And, for me, it was very spiritual. I was communing with God and enjoying his creation. And if I could hike the trail and get paid to do it, that would be my job.
Right.
When I finished the trail, it wasn't because, it was because I'd hiked the trail, but I could have kept hiking. I believe I could still be hiking today, if again, like I said, if I could do it and get paid to do it,
Right.
I just love being there. And again, the adventure, and just always a new place, new people, the wildlife, just everything about it is special.
Just having everything you need on your back.
Sure, exactly. Yeah. I didn't, had a backpack full of stuff and, one t-shirt and a pair of shorts, and it's all I needed, It was great.
And then as a section hiker, you go out on these sections and you get home and it's like, what in the world what is this stuff I have purchased? What's around me? When you're out, when you're used to having things so simple in your life, I remember the first time I went out on my first section hike and went into the gas station, it was just like, oh my God, it's so chaotic. Like I can't even deal with like picking out a candy bar. There's too many.
Right. It's like culture shock, isn't it? It really is. It's bizarre.
It is bizarre, but for some reason we love it.
Yeah, we do. Can't get enough of it for sure. I think, you think about, the real world when you think you're on the trail, or people think, there's that, and then there's the real world, so to speak. And I think, the trail's the real world. And then everything else is, that's who's missing out. And, just that trail lifestyle.
I agree. And I think that's a good place. The trail is the real world, because the trail is the real world for me.
Sure.
And I think
right on.
A lot of people would agree. Really appreciate it, Kevin. You and I have got to continue talking.
We will, certainly. Now, I so appreciate you having me on, because again, it's, all these years later, this seemed like this year being my 27th anniversary of it, for some reason, seemed like I've thought a lot more about it this spring than I have, say, at my 25th anniversary. For some reason, this season in particular, I remember come April 18th this season, just really thinking about it and just contemplating it. And so that said, I mean, you having me on and just getting to rehash these memories and look through my journals. I'd gotten my journals out and was looking through them, and it's just it's been a blessing to be a part of it. So thank you.
Not a problem. Anytime. We're going to have you back. And quite honestly, we need to hear more about that hitchhike trip you took and all the trail angels you met along the way for that.
A lot of trail angels.
A lot of trail angels.
Ma'am.
So now we've come to the point in the podcast where the guest is going to sign off for all of us by reading their own journal entry, statement, or a quote that will inspire us to keep hiking section by section.
All right. This was written on September 13th, 92. I was in Ethan Pond, New Hampshire, and my entry for that evening was, Ethan Pond is even more beautiful than I expected. We were told that this is one we should hit, and I'm definitely glad we did. Besides its beauty, it's famous for another reason. Lately, it has been visited by a rambunctious bear who isn't afraid of people and really likes their food sacks. Mikey and I have the shelter to ourselves, but there are others at the tent sites. I would be thrilled if the old bear visits tonight, at a safe distance though, of course. Mikey is up at the shelter, trying to start a fire. I'm down here at the pond, kicked back on a boulder, out on the water. This is such a peaceful place.
I love it, Kevin.
Well, thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
I appreciate it. Thanks again for having me.
Thanks for being on the podcast, Kevin. It is very evident that your love for the Appalachian Trail shines on even after 27 years. Our next segment of the show is Let's Talk Gear with Steve Kammeyer. I'm excited to introduce you to Steve and look forward to learning more about his insight on gear. Welcome to the first segment of Let's Talk Gear with Steve Kammeyer. If any of you are like me out there, I'm constantly looking at gear updates, the latest gear, and how to get pack weight down and still be comfortable. I am excited to introduce this portion of the podcast because we have found someone who can help us out with our gear. Steve Kammeyer, aka Kiki Outdoors, is one of the Facebook administrators for 3 of the best Facebook group pages, in my opinion, for backpacking gear, FAQs, and trail talk. He is also an independent rep for several gear companies, including ULA Packs. I personally have bought and sold gear on the flea market site and purchased my most recent day pack directly from Steve. It was an all-black ULA Photon pack, and I love it. He provides his customers with excellent customer service and responds to orders usually within an hour of your request. I hope to have Steve on the show for as long as he wants to chat with us about gear. Welcome to the podcast, Steve.
Hey, thank you for having me.
I am really excited about this. I think this is something that the listeners have been waiting on, especially for the Hiking Radio Network. So we'll just go right into it, Steve. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got involved with managing the 3 Facebook pages.
Well, I think I am, just like the rest of us, I am a lover of all things out the doors. I love to go out and see the sights that you can't necessarily get to by car. And I think we all know that pictures really don't just do everything justice when it comes to the beautiful stuff that we can see out in nature.
I totally agree with that.
Yeah. So hiking kind of becomes an obvious thing. And although I love to hike, I love to put in the miles every day. I am actually at heart, I am a wintertime mountaineer. You put me someplace above 10,000 feet in freezing cold temperatures, and I feel like that is my happy spot. But as far as me getting into the gear aspect of it, about 5 years ago, I moved out to Salt Lake City, Utah, which is the mecca when it comes to gear. There's a lot of the biggest name companies in the business that are located there and have their headquarters centralized there.
Nice. And it's the mecca for hiking, too.
Oh, absolutely. The Wasatch Mountains will forever be home to me, for sure. And it was kind of just like the perfect mix of everything, just kind of one of those ultimate culminations of everything. I was in the right place at the right time. I started searching Facebook for the right place to help out some other folks. And the flea market just seemed like a great thing to do. And we started it off, and things have just gone crazy in the last 5 or 6 years since then. And now we're up to 68,000 members. And
that is unbelievable. When I first saw that, I was like, well, when did this start? And you started back in 2013, right?
Correct. Yep.
Steve, you've got more people on your Facebook page, just on that one particular page, the flea market, and then the frequently asked questions and reviews. You've got about 21,000 on that one?
Yeah, I do. I believe so. When we first started hammering the flea market really, really hard, it was kind of a one size fits all type of a group. You could ask questions about gear, you could buy gear, you could sell gear, you could get other people's opinions about gear. But as our membership grew, it just got to be way too much to have in one spot. So now we've kind of divided things up a little bit. We have the flea market, which is just strictly buying and selling gear only. That's it. There's no opinions. There's no, where should I get this or whatever. And that's what the frequently asked questions page is for. That is all gear talk all day, every day. And it is legitimately awesome. There is just nonstop gear talk over there.
It is nonstop. And I'm excited because our first segment here, there's a lot of questions about backpacks on that FAQ. And I'll be honest with you, I just realized you had one called Trail Talk.
Correct. Yeah, that's something that we've kind of I don't want to say I'm totally proud of that one quite yet.
Well, you've got 6,000 members just about on that one.
Yeah, we've just been kind of kicking around that one for a while. That was kind of meant to be just a spot for folks to go that aren't necessarily Appalachian Trail hikers or Continental Divide hikers or Pacific Crest Trail hikers, to go and maybe find out about some of the small town, small area, lesser known trails. But then also a trail that maybe you could make as like a destination vacation spot. If you have a week that you can take off of work and you want to go do something completely different, here's a chance that you can maybe head to. As a matter of fact, in North Carolina, just a few weeks ago, I had a chance to hike one of the most amazing hikes that I ever have, called the Black Mountain Crest Trail. And it was just an absolutely awesome trail. And I had never, ever heard of it before.
That trail it's 12 or 13 miles long, but you go over, I think, 6,000 foot peaks.
Correct. Yeah. It is definitely, it's considered the highest trail, I guess you could call it, east of the Mississippi River. And yeah, it was 6,000 foot peaks. And we ended up at Mount Mitchell, which is the final spot on the hike, which is, of course, the highest point east of the Mississippi River. So coming from a mountaineer standpoint, where I'm used to hiking 10, 12, 14,000 foot peaks, this was actually really, really cool for me.
Nice. I'm looking forward to you being on the show. So I figured we'd just jump right in and talk about what everybody wants to hear about. It's called the Big Three: the backpack, the tent, and the sleeping bag. For this segment, I thought we'd just focus on the backpack. Honestly, there is so much you could speak on about the pack, but I thought you might be able, just to get us started, maybe there's listeners out there that are day hiking the Appalachian Trail or the Pacific Crest Trail, and they want to get more into the section hiking status. So just some basic things that people should look for when purchasing a backpack.
Well, obviously, I'm a little bit biased to ultralight adventure equipment, ULA backpacks out of Logan, Utah, but I'm going to do my best here to just kind of be really broad in my speaking.
Well, I'm kind of biased for that too. I'll be honest with you. I mean, literally for the first probably 10 years of me section hiking the AT, I used a Gregory. And then when I switched over to the ULA pack, love it. So we can be biased if we want on here. So go ahead, Steve.
Well, I honestly can say, with all honesty, that I've used a dozen different brands of packs. So I can speak on just about everything. But really, what it comes down to when choosing a pack, things have changed a little bit over the last 10, 15, 20 years. There was a day when basically you would gather up all of your gear and you would decide how much space your gear takes up. And then you would go looking for a 40-liter or 60-liter or 100-liter pack. And whatever that pack ended up being, as long as it could hold all of your gear, you were fine. And things have really changed since then. Not only the design of these packs have changed, but most importantly, the frames inside of the packs have changed. Nowadays, we can carry heavy loads with lighter packs, and that really does make a huge difference. I like to say that a backpack is like a pair of shoes. You don't want them to be too small. You don't want them to be too big. They have to fit just right, and they have to get job done. You don't want to go mountain climbing in a pair of ballet shoes. So you're really honestly looking for the perfect everything. And no matter who you are, no matter how much weight you are actually carrying and how much space your gear takes up, there is the perfect pack out there for you. It's just a matter of what you are looking for. And then it also comes down to materials. The material game, as far as backpacks go, has changed dramatically over the last decade also. We have ultra light materials now that cost a fortune and aren't really very durable. But if you're the type of person that wants to save every single gram possible, that might be the route for you.
Yeah, I was going to ask you in particular about the ultralight with the material. So you would say, would you give those one really good season of backpacking, or would you, say, hey, go on mileage? Hey, this pack will probably take 2,000 miles of being out on the trail.
Well, I feel like we're probably speaking directly towards one specific material here, so I'll just go ahead and say it. I think we're talking about the Dyneema composite fiber, or most of us just still call it Cuban fiber. Right. Which is a great material, and it does have its uses in the backpacking world. I just personally don't think that a backpack is really a good fit for that one specific material. Again, maybe it is for you. If you want to go through hike the Appalachian Trail next year, and you want to blow $300 or $400 on a pack that is basically going to be trash by the time you get done, maybe that is the right pack for you. Yes, you will be able to save maybe a half pound over the course of your 2,200 mile hike. But honestly, by the time you get done, your pack will be trashed. Right. And there's one thing about that one specific material. There is no company that will warranty that material for more than a year. And there's a reason why.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that.
It's just not a very durable material, especially when it comes to a pack. Because packs get beat up, they get dropped, they get thrown around, they get scraped up against bushes and trees. And we're all hard on our packs, no matter how much we want to baby them.
Right. And for me, I use it as a pillow too sometimes.
Right.
Right.
So, again, to each his own, and we've all heard the phrase, hike your own hike. Right. And yeah, when it comes to that one specific material, it is good for a small group of people, but as a people in whole, it's not necessarily the best material to use for an actual pack.
Right. So if obviously this podcast is geared toward section hikers. And I'll be honest with you, I used the same backpack and day pack for a long time until, I just couldn't take the smell anymore. No matter what I did, I just washed it. I still have them because they mean so much to me. I put so many miles. But for a section hiker who goes out, 1, 2, 3 weeks at a time, like I've had my ULA for now 2 or 3 years, and it literally looks like I've never used it. So the quality is there. It just depends on how often you're using the pack. Is that what you would say?
Yeah, definitely, for sure. And again, when you're talking about the materials involved here, the Rovic, which is the traditional material that ULA has been famous for, ULA actually guarantees these packs for life, and they mean it. For life is for life. And it's funny that you mentioned that. I just had a customer that just got done with the Continental Divide Trail, and he sent me pictures of his pack, and it looks exactly the same as the day that I sent it to him. I mean, it literally looks the same. And this guy, he's a younger guy, and he really likes to beat on the gear.
I agree.
It just still looks awesome.
I believe it. One more thing about the pack day packs usually one size fits all kind of thing. So if somebody's going wherever they're going, to a cottage store, a big box store to look for a pack, how should they measure the pack themselves to make sure they're even starting with the right, size pack? Because the packs are different sizes, the belts are different sizes. Walk us through that aspect of it.
Sure. When it comes to an actual day pack, most people, when they hear the term day pack, they automatically think of frameless pack. The vast majority of us aren't carrying more than, say, 15 pounds in that pack if it is a traditional day pack. If you are going to be carrying more than 15 up to maybe 18 pounds, anything over that, you would want to get something that has a frame in it. But for a traditional day pack, a frameless pack is usually all right. At that point, then yes, sizing doesn't become as much of an issue. When we say frameless packs, you kind of think about the kids and their old school packs full of books and pencils and pens. That's kind of what a frameless pack is. There's no actual frame in there. And the purpose of a frame is to transfer weight to your hip belt. So your shoulders aren't carrying all of the weight. Some of that gets transferred to the hips.
Right.
But as long as you're carrying 15, 18 pounds or less, there is no need to have a frame.
Right.
So really at that point, then it does become more about the actual capacity of the pack than it does the weight that you are carrying. If you are the type of person that, and I hate to talk about women here, but some women like to carry these big giant purses with way more stuff in them than what they would ever need.
Right. And what I've seen is the bigger your pack, you feel like you actually have to fill it up with stuff.
Correct. Yep. Correct. I mean, personally, I can go to, say, Zion National Park for a day, and I can spend a whole day out and take a couple liters of water and a few bars and maybe a little stove with me if I'm going to be actually down into, the canyon hiking. I can do the whole thing in maybe like a 10 or 12 liter pack. But, you never know. The weather could change. You might want to take a puffy jacket with you, maybe a couple of extras, base layer type stuff. 20 liter is usually pretty good, 20, 30 liter tops.
Right. All right, Steve. I think you've got us started as far as our backpack goes. I know we could continue talking about this forever and ever, but I really appreciate you chatting with us. And everybody, please go check out Steve's pages on Facebook. They'll also be listed in the show notes. Going forward, we'd love to have Steve answer some of your questions on the podcast. So if you have questions for Steve about backpacks or anything in general about backpacking gear or his Facebook pages, please send them to me via email at jesternc2212@gmail.com. See you guys on the next episode.
I'm wondering if you'd go wandering with me through the wilderness and woods to where the winds are blowing free, through the darkness of the night, heading toward the morning light. I wonder if you'd wander with me, and I'll spread the word and you beat the drum. We'll round up the troops and get the gang to come, and we'll leave the streets and these neighborhoods, head over the river what kind of trouble we'll get ourselves into. Would it be wrong to tag along with a band of vagabonds? You wonder if I'd wander with you. So I'll spread the word and you beat the drum. We'll round up the troops and get the gang to come. And we'll leave the streets in these neighborhoods, head over the river and through the woods. I'm wondering if you'd come wandering my way. If you ever get lost or if the trail leads you astray, the music of the pack can always bring you back. I wonder, can we wander away? And I'll spread the word and you beat the drum. We'll round up the troops and get the gang to come. And we'll leave the streets in these neighborhoods, head over the river and through the woods.
Looking for a fun way to win up to 25 times your money this basketball season? Test your skills on Prize Picks, the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projection for a wide variety of stats, and place your entry. It's as easy as that. If you have the skills, you can turn $10 into $250 with just a few taps. Easy gameplay, quick withdrawals, and injury insurance on your picks are what make Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. Ready to test your skills? Join the Prize Picks community of more than 7 million players who have already signed up. Right now, Prize Picks will match your first deposit up to $100. Just visit prizepicks.com/get100 and use code GET100. That's code GET100 at prizepicks.com/get100 for a first deposit matchup to $100. Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy.